G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to War Thunder with Mags, and welcome to the War Thunder patch 1.77 development server. Today we're going to be taking a look at the new aircraft that will be coming in 1.77. Now, this particular dev server, Gaijin didn't throw any gold around to testers, so I wasn't able to unlock any of the aircraft in the time frame I had. The dev server didn't actually open up until some ridiculous hour in the morning, so I had a limited amount of time with it. However, I did manage to take most of these aircraft through on the normal test flights just to have a look at them. Having said that, this is a development server. Everything is subject to change. Don't trust anything that the dev server shows you. It's just a rough outline. So first things first, we are starting off with the US tree. They get one new aircraft, and it's one that, honestly, we've been expecting for a while. This is the F-84G. More specifically, this is the F-84G21RE. This is pretty much identical to the one that's in the Italian tree, however, this one has a shiny American paint job. Now, of course, the F-84G was the version of the F-84 that was used more heavily by the United States Air Force, and it's pretty much been requested to be added to the US tree since the Italian tree was fleshed out and the F-84G actually showed up in-game. Now, differences between the two aircraft? None that I noticed. This appears to be just a straight copy-paste from the Italian tree into the US tree. This F-84G has been added after the existing F-84. They are stacked together. You will require unlocking the current F-84 to get access to the F-84G. So that's it. Moving on. So, next up we have Germany, and down at rank 4, battle rating 5.3, just before the first Arado 234, we have the HE-177. Now this aircraft is quite the rarity, as this is a Luftwaffe long-range heavy bomber. She's armed with two 20mm MG151s with 1,100 rounds of ammunition, multiple 13mm MG131 defensive gunners across the aircraft, and a turret containing a 7.92mm as well. What's more interesting at this one is its payload. It gets the Satan, 1,800 kilogram bombs, and it gets multiples of them. Its largest payload, 6,600 kilograms. This thing isn't kidding around. It's carrying a lot of explosive nastiness and some surprisingly good armor wrapped around the defensive positions of the aircraft. However, we'll go back to the payloads in just a moment. There is actually a couple of weaknesses with this particular aircraft. Taking the aircraft out onto the test flight maps to check the gunner firing arcs, and I found that there are 4 primary vulnerabilities with this aircraft. At 45 degrees to the left and right hand side of the tail, and 45 degrees to the left and right hand side of the cockpit. At around wing height or just below, there are massive dead zones in the gunner's firing coverage. None of the gunners can actually hit in these points, and these points are large enough, particularly the ones at the rear of the aircraft, to fit a good twin-engined heavy fighter inside of. So these will be the points that enemy aircraft are most likely to approach to. The aircraft's maneuverability also very sluggish in flight, as you would expect from a heavy bomber, but this does mean that maneuvering the aircraft to try and keep people out of these weak spots is going to be difficult. So, the payload options, as I mentioned before, as you can see, the biggest payload, 2 Satans, that is 2 1,800 kilogram bombs, plus 6 500 kilogram bombs. We have a twin 1,800 payload if you're after something a little bit lighter, 4 1,000 kilogram bombs, 6 500s, 12 250 kilogram bombs, or 48 50s if you just want to carpet bomb an entire area. I like the payload options on this one. In particular, that Twin Satan 6 500 kilogram load is going to be devastating when taking out base targets. So overall, a pretty good looking heavy bomber, but with some weaknesses that should prevent it from becoming a total gunship. So next up, of course, we have Mother Russia, who only really gets one new plane for this patch. This is, of course, the LA-200, which appears after the LA-15 in terms of the tech tree. Now, I'm not going to be spending a huge amount of time on the LA-200 here today. No doubt you've already heard about the aircraft. It has been getting a lot of buzz since it was first announced, especially due to its odd design. The LA-200 is actually a twin-engined jet fighter design, but rather than having the 2 engines in the rear of the aircraft side by side, both pushing thrust directly out of the rear of the aircraft, in the LA-200, one engine is in the rear in that configuration, the other is in the front and breathes its thrust down below the aircraft in between the wings. To top it off, it's also a twin pilot design with a side-by-side configuration and is armed with 3 37mm N37D cannons with 150 rounds, giving it some of the heaviest firepower in the game. Taking it out on the test flight map, the aircraft's top speed was not as fast as you would expect. Even running in reference mode, getting it up around 1,100 kilometers an hour required a dive, and its acceleration was relatively poor. The only things particularly notable about the aircraft that I found taking it out on that test flight was it was surprisingly maneuverable for an aircraft of its size and weight, and it had a pretty good climb rate for an aircraft of its size. This is probably going to be a reasonably good bomber interceptor, getting to a high altitude at a fairly high pace, and having a lot of firepower to actually be able to deal with high altitude bombers. Outside of that, unless something drastically changes between what I experienced on the test server and what appears on live, I don't really see this aircraft as shaking up the current meta for jet combat. So, next up we are in the British tree, and the British actually get two new aircraft. Both of them Spitfires. We get the Spitfire Mark 5B and the Spitfire Mark 5C. Now, these are different as these are not the tropical versions that we have had in game for a very long time. In fact, these two versions of the Spitfire have been versions that I know I personally and I know of others have been wondering why they haven't been included in the game for a very long time. These were the base models that the tropical versions that we do have were built on. So, what's special about them? Well, not really a whole lot, especially considering how many Spitfires we already have in the game. These two do perform relatively closely to their Mark V tropical counterparts. They are a little bit faster in level flight, but really, that's it. The only noticeable difference between these and their tropical counterparts is that they are 0.3 battle rating higher. So the 5B is 0.3 battle rating higher than the 5B tropical. Likewise, the 5C is 0.3 battle rating higher than the 5C tropical. But that's really it. In fact, on the test server at the moment, I wouldn't be surprised to find out that they are actually using placeholder flight models taken directly from their tropical counterparts. They felt that similar. So, next up, following the British, we have Japan, and directly under the Ki-102 Otsu, we have the Ki-108. Now, I'm going to be honest, I'm interested in this aircraft from an historical standpoint, but beyond that, I'm not really interested in flying it. While it is a beautiful plane, the general rule of thumb is Japanese heavy fighters work really well at low tiers. Once you start getting up around rank 3 and beyond, around the battle rating 4, which is exactly where this one sits, they start getting torn to absolute pieces by high performance single engine fighters, which is exactly what you would expect to happen. This one here, I'll be honest, as pretty as the aircraft is, its weapons loadout is not overly interesting either. It's got a 37mm HO-203 cannon with 25 shots mounted in the nose. It's got two 20mm HO-5 cannons with 400 rounds in between them, which is a decent load of ammunition, but it has no ordnance options. It cannot carry torpedoes, it cannot carry rockets, it cannot carry bombs. What you see is what you get. You get 37mm and 220s, which is actually similar loadouts to some of the fighters that we've already got in-game in the Japanese heavy fighter line. It's not overly fast, its climb rate isn't particularly high. Yeah, I can see what the aircraft is designed to do. It's designed to intercept American heavy bombers and take them out, but I don't see it as being overly useful inside of War Thunder. And so we move on to the Italians, and these trees keep getting longer and longer, and this one actually looks like it could be a lot of fun. This is the RE2000 Series 1. Now this thing is a hell of a lot of fun to fly. Rank 1, battle rating 2, incredibly maneuverable. 17.2 on the turn time on the stat card, which I'm sure you can translate through, means it can damn near fold in on top of itself. It's armed with two 12.7mm Bretters with 600 rounds of ammunition, which is not a gun that I like in high tiers, but at battle rating 2 is an incredibly good weapon. And overall, a lot of the aircraft stylings are actually based around the American P-35. In terms of flying it, dicking around with it on the test maps, it actually reminds me a lot of the Hawk. So if you're a fan of the Hawk, you're probably going to have a lot of fun with this little machine. I should probably also point out that it's not exactly slow for its battle rating either. It's actually quite nippy. Beyond that, the Italians get one other aircraft. It's 1,300 gold, and it is a premium Spitfire Mark V Tropical. Specifically the Mark 5B, and it's identical to the Mark 5B you find in the British tree in every way. So it's actually going to be a very good premium. The Mark 5B is a very good aircraft, but it's another captured premium aircraft. Anyways, moving on. So last but not least, we come to the French, and at rank 1, battle rating 2.3, we get the Martin 167A3. Historically, this aircraft is more commonly known as the Marylande. It's a US-built bomber that was built as competition for the A-20 series. Now, the A-20 won the contracts in Europe, however, both the French and British governments still put in orders for this particular bomber, so this should show up in the British tree as well. Overall, there was about 400 to 500 of these aircraft built, and most of them were shipped overseas, although the French couldn't actually start receiving their orders until late 1939 due to the US arms embargo. Now, while that was eventually lifted and the aircraft were shipped through, the French never received their full order. Anyways, in War Thunder we have two bomb load options available for the aircraft. The default bomb load is 4 250-pound bombs, the upgraded load is 8 250-pound bombs. Now this is pretty light on, but this is an incredibly fast medium bomber at an incredibly low battle rating. 8 250s at battle rating 2.3 is not awful. Now the French, of course, also get a new premium as well. It's a Yak-3, 1600 gold. Not much to say there, it's exactly the same as the Yak-3 in the Russian tree, so moving on. Now, they get this, the MD-452, also known as the Dassault Mystère, and I think I managed to pronounce that one correctly for once. Anyways, this is a single-engine swept-wing French fighter bomber, went into production in 1951, entered service with the French Air Force in 1954, but all production had stopped by 1957, and it was back out of service by 1963. Now, what's particularly interesting about this aircraft is it's an example of the times. While its service life and its production life were actually very short, it wasn't because there was anything particularly wrong with the aircraft. It's that jet design was advancing so quickly in this frame of time that even as the second run of these aircraft were getting ready to enter production, the very company that designed the aircraft, Dassault, had already developed a new aircraft that would replace it. Now with this one, I didn't actually get to test fly it to see how maneuverable it was, but being a fighter bomber, I'm not expecting groundbreaking stuff here. Also, it is notably slower than a lot of the top-end fighters that we already have, which does make sense considering its role. However, it is armed with twin 30mm cannons, so its forward firepower is pretty serious, with a fairly wide selection of belt options, and of course we have the secondary weapons loadout, twin 500-pound bombs, twin 1,000-pound bombs. The rocket loadout is interesting, 38 Type 23 rockets. Now these are only 10kg rockets, but there is a lot of them and they do move at 600 meters per second, so I can see that particular loadout being used to wipe out other bombers at high battle ratings. So anyways, ladies and gents, this is everything on the patch 1.77 dev server in terms of aircraft. Now as I mentioned at the start of the video, this is a development server. Everything is subject to change. There are likely aircraft here, particularly those Spitfires, that are using placeholder flight models. As with every development server, expect there to be changes between the dev server and the live release. Anyways, ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching. Remember to check the video description down below for links to all of my social media, my Twitch and my Patreon if you would like to help support the channel. And as always, remember to click that like button, share and subscribe if you would like to see more. And until next time, fly smart, fly safe, and I'll catch you in the skies.